Debate season. Yes, it is time to hear your favorite or not your favorite candidate debate the other candidate.
Whip it, whip it, work,
Welcome everyone to another episode of The Black Brief. Episode 5 will be called Abortions, More Important Now Than Ever. So welcome to The Black Brief, where we give you the latest of politics, pop culture, and problems of the day, briefed in a very Jaylen Black way. So let's get into it. So for politics, we are going to talk about debate season. Yes, it is time to hear your favorite or not your favorite candidate debate the other candidate. And I think debate season is so exciting for political people and just non-political people, because whether you watch it or not, you're probably going to watch the clips, you're going to watch those viral moments, and it's going to be a time. Personally, in Georgia, we like to have a lot of debate watch parties. I know I will be attending many of them. And it's cool to sit around and watch certain issues be talked about by candidates, because as a voter, yes, you should be curious how this person answers and what their plan is for your life. That's important. And I think debates really just give you a very clear sense of who is sharp on policies, who knows what they're talking about, and who has it together to be able to show the American people that they are worth your time and your vote. So let's go into a bit of predictions about how I feel like this debate season will go. So on the presidential level, we have Kamala Harris, who is going to be debating Donald Trump. And then we have Tim Walz, who's going to be debating JD Vance. So the president and the vice president, they have their separate debates. And then down the ballot, because again, I promise you, we're going to talk about way more than just the presidential ticket. Down the ballot, you also have debates going on if they accept. Not every race will have a debate, but some of them will. So pay attention to what's going on in your district and the people that you're voting for. So this is what I'm expecting on the vice president side, Tim Walz and JD Vance. I am expecting for it to be more of a coherent debate on the vice president side, and I'll explain why in a second. But essentially, JD Vance, he likes to present himself as a polished lawyer, venture capitalist who knows what he's talking about. He often, I pay attention to how politicians answer, and I can tell those that have had more interview prep than others. I will say it's a chance that he could perform well, because he tries to present himself family man. He has 2 biracial children. I've been here. I've been a senator. I understand this. I actually do expect him to contrast himself from Tim Walz, who is the Minnesota governor. And I think he's probably going to contrast a bit more on the Senate level versus a governor's level. Both very important seats to hold, but senators are in Congress, so they have more influence with actual the executive branch, which being the president and the vice president. On the other hand, I do think Tim Walz is going to be sharp as well. He has been doing a good job of just relating everyday policies back to people. So he loves children. That's why he signed the bill to make sure all children can have free school breakfast and school lunch. He loves the environment. That's why he signed some of the most aggressive climate legislation to reverse a lot of the negative consequences we're seeing. And he loves and cares about the LGBTQ community. So I expect him to really contrast himself from JD Vance on these key issues, as well as the topic of abortions, and reproductive rights and access. He's been very pro-choice as a governor and signed legislation after Roe v. Wade overturned in June 2022. To go back a bit, Roe v. Wade is that flagship Supreme Court ruling that was overturned that reversed over 50 years of what was the law of the land of being able to access abortion. So this is huge. And we're having our first presidential debate since that big overturning. And on the presidential side, you have Kamala Harris and Donald Trump. That will be entertaining. Kamala Harris is a prosecutor. So prosecutors naturally come very sharp. They're in the courtroom. They're making a case against someone. And what is the irony that you're going to have a prosecutor debate a criminal? That is Donald Trump. I don't make the rules. He is a criminal by legal terms. Like, he is a convicted felon. So I do think Kamala Harris will contrast herself quite a bit from Donald Trump and how dangerous he was as a president from 2016 to 2020. And I think Kamala Harris will also use this time to show that I wasn't just vice president. I'm second in command, like, to Joe Biden. Like, I was in the situation rooms. I was negotiating things. Like, I have the expertise and the ability to get these things and deliver on promises to America. I think Donald Trump will attack her a lot on the border. He's been calling her the border czar. He's been saying a lot about how our borders are open and unsafe and Kamala does nothing about it. When in actuality, Donald Trump actually convinced Republican members of Congress to vote down a border bill simply because it fit better for his campaign. If they were to fix it, what was he going to run on? So I expect Kamala Harris to bring that up in a debate as well. And Donald Trump is just really not a sharp debater. I think this will be the hugest contrast because, again, when the first debate happened with Joe Biden and Donald Trump, people were like, oh my God, Joe Biden did horrible. He was sick. He couldn't really like put sentences together. So of course it made Trump look better in that regard. But now he is not going up against Donald. He's not going up against Joe Biden, baby. He has Kamala Harris. So I expect that to be fun. So get involved in your local parties. Go find a watch party. Go talk about this with people. I think it's actually cool to be civically engaged. And you never know, you might really enjoy it more than you think. So definitely tune in to the upcoming debates. Problems of the day, which is essentially the topic of this episode. Abortion access, reproductive access. Let's talk about it. I just want to start off this with some numbers because whether you like or agree or disagree with what I'm saying, what can't be debated are numbers, which is why as a writer, as a communicator, I actually love numbers because I can go off the numbers because we're going off of facts. 57% of Black women in the United States, this is an NBC fact, you can Google everything I'm saying, 57% of Black women in the United States live in a state that either has a complete ban on abortions or a very, very restrictive ban on abortions. 57% of Black women. So when Roe v. Wade overturned, reversing nearly 50 years of protections of our own bodies to make decisions for our lives and our bodies, was taken down, the power to control or not to control women's bodies then went to the state level. So you're seeing disproportionate impacts across the board. So in some states like New York and California, you can still access abortion at pretty relatively decent time. They still have had more restrictions since the law has overturned. And then you look at places like the South, particularly the Southeast of the United States. I'm talking Louisiana, Mississippi, Alabama, Georgia, Tennessee, Florida. You have your most restrictions. And you might be wondering, okay, the South, I wonder what the demographics look like there. It's Black people, it's white people, it's all people. But in large parts, a lot of Black and white people. You have some of your densest areas of Black populations in the South. So of course, when you have some of the most restrictive rights on your body, it's going to inevitably impact Black people more. And something I also want to mention about this topic is this is healthcare. It is just really crazy to me how healthcare has become political. So if you're watching this in the state of Georgia, please understand me when I say we have what you call a 6-week ban on abortions. If you've ever been pregnant, if you've ever given birth, or if you know someone who has been a part of this process, most women and birthing people will tell you, I would not know that I'm pregnant in 6 weeks. I know my mom told me that she figured out she was pregnant like 20 weeks. Like, everybody's body is different. You could literally have no symptoms of pregnancy at all and be pregnant. And now you live in a state with this restrictive ban. If you figure out you're pregnant after this time window, you can no longer access any care for what you need in this state. So with the addition of this disproportionately impacting Black people and Hispanic people in particular, it is also cutting across socioeconomic concerns. Because if I am, wealthier, maybe living in the suburbs, Johns Creek, Sewanee, you know, these sort of places in Georgia, I might be making, I don't know, a mere $500,000 a year. Let's just say, let's be helpful. I could probably get on a flight, Hartsfield Jackson Airport, I'm in the metro, and then go fly to Virginia, let's say, to have an abortion because I'm in a higher tax bracket. But let's say I'm a person from South Atlanta, maybe east side of Atlanta, west side of Atlanta, I don't know. Any regular working class person, first of all, you would have to get time off of work, call a million places to figure out what your options are. Then hopefully you have money to afford a plane ticket. Then hopefully have money to afford the procedure in another state. And hopefully they have time to see you in time for you to make the best decision for your body. Do you all not see the problem in this? Everybody is struggling because of this law being overturned. This is one of the most important things that people should be talking about right now. Abortions are one of those things that, yes, everyone can't just come out and speak on camera about their abortion, about their miscarriage, about anything like that. But if you just talk to people, like dinner table conversation, at the bar conversation, at the park conversation, people are talking about how they no longer have access to their own bodies. This is insane. This is also insane, particularly in Georgia and in Southeast states that have the worst healthcare infrastructures in the country. Due to Byron Kemp being governor of Georgia and many other factors, we have hospitals closing in the state. 6 and counting closed on his watch. The last being the Atlanta Medical Center, which was smack dab in the middle of the city, one of the fastest growing cities in Atlanta, Georgia in the world. So you have a crumbling healthcare infrastructure. And the last I checked, about 2 years ago, Georgia had 82 counties that did not have a single OBGYN. So politicians are saying, you don't have access to your body. You can't have an abortion if you want. You can't act if you're having a miscarriage that basically looks the same way as an abortion. So now you're restricting medicine to actually be able to have this perform in a safe and healthier way for your body. Women are suffering. Women are bleeding out. Women are dying. Remember I told you how important Supreme Court rulings are this year? A law called EMTALA was ruled on in Supreme Court, which basically is the women's decisions to, like, if you arrive at an emergency room, that a healthcare provider has to treat you if you're in a life or death situation. Ask me, who is most likely, by the numbers, by the statistics, who's most likely to be in an emergency room for care? It is Black and Hispanic people. So you're seeing disproportionate impacts across the board with the overturn of Roe v. Wade. And this is a central issue, not only in our lives, but politically. Like, understanding that a lot of women might be moved simply because they're like, it's none of y'all's business what I'm doing, what me and my partner, what we're deciding for my body. Like, it should not be. It should not be in the government's control. And I wish more people would talk about this, because we cannot spend another couple months and years like this. Like, people are quite literally dying, and that's not an exaggeration. If we don't have access to our own bodies, people are forced to, their decision is taken away to make any sort of rational health decision with them and their doctor, because the government has now decided. So what you'll see is Kamala Harris and the Democratic ticket are going to lean very heavy in the issue of reproductive rights, access to abortion, access to birth control, access to IVF, because these things are slowly but surely being taken away from us in levels that is disproportionately impacting across racial lines, across socioeconomic lines, across geographic lines. Let's talk about rural communities accessing abortions. Most abortion providers, if your state has them, are in the metros, the cities. It's sad. What are we doing about our rural communities? So again, they are usually less likely to have their voices being heard in this. And I care so much about rural healthcare because I understand no matter who you are in this country, no matter where you are in this country, you deserve access of comprehensive and affordable healthcare. And that is something I will always believe in. So Black women in particular, like, we already have a hard time giving birth, harder than any other race. Black women are 3 times more likely to die giving birth. In Georgia, we actually have some of the highest maternal mortality rates in the country, which means women are more likely to die giving birth. So now, instead of giving people a decision of what happens to them, you're taking that away and just saying, figure it out. So I call Republicans the forced birth party because that's all it is. It's not pro-life because you're underfunding schools, you're underfunding healthcare, you're underfunding any opportunity for a child to have a good life in the state, but you want people to have babies. But you also want to combat crime and you also want to combat these other things. And you don't realize that starts at the home. It starts when people get to determine when and how they start their families, and you're taking that away. So if you are not talking about reproductive rights, I don't know what you're waiting on, because when we see a baby boom in the next 2-3 years and you realize, dang, why are these teens pregnant? Why are all these people, why did I lose a cousin? Because she was in the hospital. Fine. It's the consequences of these actions. And I need everybody to understand that reproductive rights are on the ballot and we have to get anybody out of office trying to take away the rights to our bodies, period. Great organizations to get involved with: Planned Parenthood Southeast. They're doing an amazing job building out a storyteller program to actually talk about reproductive rights. So you can follow them at PPSC_advocates to share your story, share to anybody you know. OBGYNs, I know it's much easier sometimes being a medical professional to stay out of politics, but how can you stay out of politics when politics has made your profession dangerous? Doctors do not deserve to be persecuted because they're trying to contemplate, does this fall into the law? Does that fall into the law? The laws were written by people that aren't doctors. The laws are written by a lot of people that don't even have vaginas, that can't even give birth. So, period. Let's get into it. So we need your voices raised as well. And then finally, pop culture. What are the people talking about? Let me tell you, domestic violence is a problem, not just in this country, but in every country in this world. And domestic violence is not just against women. Domestic violence happens to men. Domestic violence happens to all people. But domestic violence is a problem. There's a list of top things in my life that I just simply do not stand for. And domestic violence is like one of those top 3 for me. So I'm sad to share and see the reporting that a Uganda track runner, I think she's a long-term runner, just represented her country very proudly in the Paris Olympics. If you're an Olympian, just know these Olympians have worked their entire lives to be in this moment. She just competed at the biggest stage in her life. And then a few short months afterwards was doused and burned by her partner and killed. Her name was Rebecca Cheptegei. And it's incredibly tragic and sad because for this to happen to anybody is sad. And I think it becomes more apparent when you talk about an Olympian too. Like, wow, this can happen to anybody. I didn't think domestic. It's so crazy to me because people are like, oh, like, is domestic violence even happening? I don't ever hear about it. But why are some women hearing about it from their friends, but the men don't hear about it from their friends? You never just kind of think like, is my friend a problem? Check your friends. If you know something disrespectful has started, check your friends, because one thing leads to another. One bruise leads to a black eye. One black eye leads to a bullet. One bullet, it's only a matter of time. So like, we should not be going through this as a community. That is truly a problem. And that's truly something we need to stand up against. Domestic violence will never stand. But would you look at the time? Speaking of Black, speaking of brief, this has been another amazing episode. Thank you so much for tuning in to episode 5, Abortions, More Important Now Than Ever. See you next time.